I also want to say thank you, because at the end of the day, I don't have to be here and you don't have to be here. I've done really well in my life financially and otherwise, and I don't have to be here. And you've all been successful without me, so you certainly don't need me. I really do believe that my wife or my family and I would probably stumble through the rest of our life without you, and you'd be great. But I think we could probably help each other, especially in the midst of uncertainty. And because we're all stuck at home, or frankly, I hope we're stuck at home because we can get through the pandemic faster, we're all hoping it will end soon. So regardless of what you hear or what you believe, you've taken time out of your day to listen to my thoughts. And what I want you to know is it's all about being the victor, not the victim. I can't remember the last time I was a victim. There was a downturn in the economy in 1979 and 80, and real estate took a dive. There was another one in 89, 90, real estate took a dive. There was another one in 2005 through 2006, real estate took a dive. Guess what? There's likely to be some correction as a result of all this. But real estate tends to lag those other things, and it leaves clues. That's why I love real estate, because when real estate is going to correct, it leaves clues in advance so that I'm not in the position of being surprised and seeing my stock price drop by a third overnight, or seeing oil drop to the point last week, literally this week, oil dropped to the point where people are literally coming to you and saying, if you'll take this off my hands, it's for free. If you can, in fact, I'll pay you to take it off my hand. It's a crazy market that we're in. And so for you to stick your head in the sand is just shameful, because what I'm going to tell you is going to actually help you understand where we are and then allow you to position yourself to win from it. So what am I going to do? Talk about the global reset, talk about volatility and the fact that it'll equal opportunity for you, do a quick economic update, talk about what you want to do, the 5 things that our family's doing that maybe you can cheat off us and do yourself. Be a learner, not just learn it. I'm sure you don't know what I mean by that, but you will. And then give you a couple of last thoughts. There's a global reset happening. This is something that hasn't happened in the past. That's one of the things that's so uncertain about what's going on moving forward, is that the entire globe is resetting. As Rob, and he mentioned that he's one of my Access insiders, we have a small group of people, of which Rob is part of it, that hear from me weekly, as well as my family, on what we're doing. And they have heard me say for the last year that there were too many things that were uncertain for us not to have a recession. What happened was that oil and COVID-19 weren't on the list. The stock market and real estate were at their historical peaks. So by definition, when any market is at its peak, it has more downside than upside. So when you're investing near the top, you're really more of a speculator. If you know where the bottom is, you're truly an investor. And I believed that cash would be king. So last year I started stockpiling cash because I felt like there would be great opportunities, that America might just be on sale again. After all, that's how I viewed it a decade or so ago. And I wasn't just generating cash for investment purposes, but I was doing it to make sure that my family and I could weather the storm, that we would be in a position during the ravages of a recession to be able to capitalize on it. So how was I so confident in where we were going and why I felt as though we were heading there? We do an enormous amount of research, and our data sources are extensive. And we spend tens of thousands of dollars a month trying to figure this out. I don't do it for you. I do it for my family so that we don't make mistakes. We've made money on 99.9% of our deals. I won't show you our scoreboard because it's not relevant today. All you need to know is that we lose 0.1%. We're not perfect, no one is, but we're as perfect as you can get. It's because we cheat off other people and that we're willing to invest in ourselves through research and other things. So now let's talk about volatility and the fact that it does mean opportunity and what you ought to be doing as a real estate professional now. I deliver, as Rob said, the State of the Union. And I started in 2005 on the right-hand side there at Harvard when I talked about the fact that the market was going to implode and that I was getting out of the market because it was going to take a nosedive in 2006. Guess what? I was wrong. It took its nosedive in February of 2007. So as I always tell you, and I think I started with this, forecasts are always wrong. The only question is by how much and in which direction. Fortunately, I've been right in the right direction. And in 2008, to that audience at the bottom there, I said, I'm going all in Las Vegas. Well, you can imagine how that went over because it was the foreclosure capital of America, and 7 out of every 10 homes, 68% were underwater. So you can imagine I got thrown out of that room too. In 2011, I said, we are at or near the bottom of the market. So if you don't take advantage of this now, shame on all of you, because I told you what was going to happen in 2005. I told you in 2008. I don't know how many of you did anything about it, but I'm telling you in 2011, the market is going to bottom soon. It did in January of 2012. So at the end of the day, right now, take inventory of yourself. What do? Well, I've recently taken inventory of myself. I'm a market timer in real estate. I got out in 2005. I got in 2009. I got out in 2018, and I plan to get back in soon. But see, I do something different than you. You're a real estate agent or a broker. I am a real estate investor. One of my sons has a real estate license. My other son built one of the biggest lending companies as an LO. At the end of the day, we are very involved in real estate and lending, but as investors, we think differently than you. So you should be going pedal to the metal right now, whereas we have times where we have cause for pause. Because the single most important word in real estate is timing. If you can get the when right, the where, the how, the who, and the what are insignificant. Imagine getting in your favorite market back in 2011 before it took off in 2012. That is pretty cool. That's why I'm a real estate investor. But I'm an investor depending upon where we are in the market cycle. I get in, I get out. Most of the time I'm in, but a lot of the time I'm out. Because, of course, the most important thing in real estate is to get out at the right time and get in. Which of those is the most important? Think about that for a minute. Is it more important to get out of the market at the right time or in? The answer is to get out. Because you know what happened in 2006 and 7, and most of you didn't even have any idea it was coming. A lot of people can get crushed. So we get out and get in at the right times. And folks like Rob, as part of our insider group, are able to not just earn active income off commissions, not just earn recurring income off of those of you who generate commissions as well, but they can generate passive recurring income off investments. So what I want you to do is ultimately win the game of life. And that starts with making money. And so as a real estate investor, you can do it, but that's your choice. That's not what I'm pushing today. I'm also a private lender. So I loan money to real estate investors because it allows for me to scale the business and help my flippers know what's coming, where it's coming next, what's happening, how they can capitalize on it, and then I give them the money to do it. At all times in the market cycle, I can do this because flipping works anytime. I try to be a great husband and a partner to my wife, Poon, and I try to be a great dad. I really want to optimize my family. I believe I was put on the earth to be a great dad. All this other stuff is just a way to make money. I have 2 sons. My youngest one, Josh, is getting a lot of attention. He was on TV there in the middle this week because he's looking to build another billion-dollar company in real estate. Between 2013 and 2017 or 18, he actually built the largest hard money lender in America in 4 years, which became a billion-dollar company. And now he's excited about the real estate play and has built another company that's already on its path to success. So at the end of the day, we're serious about real estate. We're not just doing this for the heck of it. I guess what we could do if we were smarter is we could, invest in a little better lighting. You see the guy on the left there is in a studio, and the lady on the right's probably in the studio. And my son, he told me, was at 6 a.m. in the morning on the 4th level. He's got a home in San Francisco that's 4 stories, and he had to get up to the top because his 3-year-old and his 6-month-old would be trying to chase him otherwise. And I said, dude, you got to get some makeup and some better lighting there. Come on. Anyway, so economic update. For any of you who've heard me say this before, uh, you can't say I didn't tell you so, but I've been showing a slide to Rob and to others. In fact, I showed this in Mexico. Think about that in a minute. I showed this slide in Mexico the month before this whole thing started unraveling. And I said, I've shown this slide at every presentation in the last year. Here I am in Mexico. It's February, and I'm telling you to expect a recession in 2020. And I gave all these ideas and all these things that could potentially trigger a recession. And I honestly expected more than one of them to do it. Well, I didn't see oil prices going to where they were. I certainly didn't see coronavirus coming into our future like it has. So even folks like me who are market timers, who have an economics background, who speak at university, even people like me are still struggling to understand how we got here. Now, I understand actually what the recent past has meant and why it's happened. But the question really is, where are we going for the future? Well, we already had a situation where we had a house of cards. Now, I don't expect that you're economists. I don't expect that you're even business majors. But I'm telling you, when you're at or near the peak of something like the stock market or junk bonds or the unicorn valuations, privately held companies that grow to $1 billion, like my son's company or Airbnb or Uber, and there's record high auto debt and student loans and real estate and non-bank mortgages. All of this debt is going to have to be structured in some way at some point, and it's not all going to happen by this summer. So I'm telling you, it's not going to be the V shape that you might hope. Now add to that the businesses that are laden with record debt. You see, public company debt grew 4 times faster than revenue from 2009 through 2018. That's a 10-year period. Imagine your household, and all of a sudden your debt, your expenses are growing 4 times faster than your income. How's that going to work out for you? The good news as you look at the bottom is that building materials and real estate and home building have actually performed better. They don't have as much debt, which is really good in the building segment because the debt that they have doesn't have to be repaid that quickly. Now, I'm sorry, I don't want to lose you, and I don't want to speak over your head. I don't mean to do that, but this is really important because it ultimately kind of boils down to the house of cards that COVID basically tipped over and the ghost towns of the United States that it created. Here's Vegas on a Saturday. Can you imagine on a Saturday in Las Vegas or in Times Square or in Washington, D.C., where we found a person, or Chinatown on a Saturday in San Francisco, and the beaches of Southern California shutting down, the whole country shutting? Who could have imagined that 2 months ago? Seriously. I mean, if I had told you that 2 months ago, in fact, if I'd told you that when I saw many of you in Mexico, you would have looked at me like I had 2 heads and I wouldn't have been invited back to talk. But at the end of the day, we're somewhere. Where is that? Today, here's where we are. We're somewhere in this situation called a pandemic, which is likely the greatest in 100 years. We're also the greatest economic contraction since the Great Depression, where I think Scott mentioned it earlier, weekly unemployment claims are $26 million or 26 million people in 5 weeks, which is greater than the 23 million job gains that have been gained in the last 10 years following the financial meltdown. Think of that. 10 years is 520 weeks. We lost more jobs in 5 weeks. In 1% of the time, we lost more jobs. It's a crazy phenomenon that we've got going on. While oil prices are going through the bottom, and all of this is happening simultaneously. It's not like one of these things is happening. They're all happening. The greatest central bank or government intervention of all time. And at the end of the day, because it's all happening simultaneously, including the positive stuff that the bank and the feds are trying to do, it puts us in a position where the word we hear most often these days is unprecedented. Well, you hear it all the time. I almost get tired of saying it because it's so overused, but look it up sometime. It's an adjective and it means never done and never known before. Think about that. It's never been done in our lifetime and we've never known what it's like. So when we say unprecedented and we refer back to things like the bubble in 2001 or 2018, which were also viewed and characterized as unprecedented, they weren't. They were meltdowns to be sure, but unprecedented? No. I've studied 1979-80 and the collapse after that, 89-90, and of course, I predicted the 2005 crash. And here we are looking at those, and I can tell you, I'm really having a hard time on the prediction on this one. I just believe it's going to be longer than we think. But I'm always reminded this is the time to be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. I probably don't have to tell you whether people are greedy or fearful now, but people are on fear alert. So it's a great time if you choose to take advantage and turn the economy into your economy. So here are those 5 things. Number 1, prepare. There are 3 stages that our family, we have a fair amount of wealth. So we've created a family office where we treat our family like a business, not in the cold sense, because we're still hugging and kissing and loving on each other, but we're in 4 different cities managing different businesses that all roll up to this empire. Now, we're not Rockefeller and we're not Trump, but we've done pretty well compared to those of you who are likely on this call. Yeah, on February 28th, my sons and I had a call with the guy in the picture on the bottom on the lower left-hand side. So Dr. Jordan Schlane is sort of the doctor for the ultra wealthy, the people who roll off your tongue, whose names roll off your tongue. And he is the CEO of a company called Private Medical, which is a referral-only program, and there are only 800 or 900 clients. So we had a call with him, and he told us this would be much worse than people were being told. And of course, we were naturally skeptical. I'm not an epidemiologist. I don't know anything about what's going on from a health standpoint. But, when somebody that smart tells you something, it's like the guys who kicked this off today. When they tell you something, they know what they're talking about. They know how to build a company like EXP, and they know how to help you build it with them. Well, I don't know anything about health, but I know a lot about real estate. And we went into war room mode quickly as a family, because I believe, and we've always believed, that every time we go into crisis, we prepare for 3 things, or at least do 3 things to prepare. Number 1, we insure. What does that mean? Well, think of insurance, property insurance, health insurance. Why do you buy it? Because you want someone else to accept the risk for what might happen to you or your property. Well, you should have been doing estate planning. You should be doing, buying N95 masks, food, water, cash, guns. I mean, desperate people do desperate things. I don't plan on using one, but I certainly don't want to not be insured against the likelihood of it happening. Number 2, de-risk. That means you've got to de-risk your family and de-risk your financials. Our family went into quarantine. We just didn't mess with this. We decided we were going into quarantine, and it was right after I got back from a trip to San Francisco, where I flew out on a Wednesday, and as the world was unraveling, I decided to fly back on Thursday. I literally spent 28 hours flying from Puerto Rico to San Francisco and back because things unraveled so quickly. So optimize your financials. And I know it's been very difficult for most of you, but it was easy for us because we were anticipating recession. We just didn't know what was going to trigger it. So we were exactly where we needed to be, but we had to go into quarantine. And then in parallel, in week 1, where we're insuring and making sure that we're safe and healthy, while we're de-risking, we're also optimizing. That's what want you folks to think about is, what are you going to do to optimize? Look, wealth is going to be transferred. The only question is, which end of the receipt are you going to be on? And so I believe I want to be on the reception side, not the giving side, because I know volatility equals opportunity. This is not my first rodeo. Well, rather than show you a lot of other bad news charts, which I could clearly show you about deaths and new cases and all that, let me give you the good news. If we had not taken measures, look where we'd be. The fact that we did has been difficult for all of you, and it's been tough on our economy. But at the end of the day, if we hadn't done it, I can assure you that from a hockey stick standpoint, we'd be in a place that none of us would want to be. So we have to do the things we have to do when we have to do them. What do you do at every point in the market cycle? Well, look at optimism there on the left. Think 2003, because all of you are real estate agents. If you go back a decade, or brokers, you know exactly where I'm going. You were optimistic in 2003. You were excited in 2004. In 2005, you were thrilled. In 2006, you were euphoric. And the people who were euphoric were hearing me tell them that the market was going to implode. So you can imagine how I was viewed. At that time, 2007 happened and people started becoming complacent. They were in denial. They became anxious in 8. Then they were in full-fledged denial in 9. Well, we're not in 2010 or 11, but that star probably represents where we are today, if you think about it. People are fearful. And in some cases, they don't know what the future holds, or they're starting to hear of people that they know who've been infected, and they're starting to be a little panicked. There are some people who aren't getting government assistance as quickly as they'd like, and they're not taking as much control of themselves and their situation as perhaps they should have, so they naturally revert to anger and want to blame other people. Now, look, I grew up in a trailer park for the first 20% of my life. My parents had an 8th grade education. I ate mayonnaise sandwiches for 22 months while after my dad fell off a job that he was working on as an iron worker. I know what it's like to be angry. I know what it's like to have a scarcity mindset. And I'm telling you, get over it. It's not going to do you any good. This is the time where you need to realize that the other 80% are thinking that way. So you need to be in the 20%. If you can be in the top 20% of the 20%, like the guys who just introduced me, now you're in the top 4% and you can capitalize on anything because you've got the confidence. What do I have that you don't have possibly? Well, I've got 3 things. 1, I have research. 2nd, I got experience. 3rd, I have knowledge that I've generated over the years. That's allowed me to give me the confidence to know that no matter what anybody throws at me, my family and I are going to come out on top. I don't think I know it all. I know I don't know. In fact, I always say, I don't know 99% of stuff in life. But this real estate thing, this lending, I got that nailed. So that's where I focus my energy. And that's where I hope that you can benefit from what I know. Number 2, remember I said number 1 is to plan and prepare. Number 2 is to take what the market gives you and survive. Now, normally when I show this slide, I'm talking about the real estate market. I don't always do the same things in the real estate market at different points in the market cycle. Sometimes I buy and hold as an investor. Sometimes I flip. Sometimes I lend. Sometimes I do vacation rentals. Sometimes I do conversions of apartments to I do different things depending upon where we are in the market cycle because I know exactly what to do on that wavelength that I just showed you on the previous slide. But now many of you have to survive, and I get that. And all 3 of these government agencies are going all in to save you and to save the housing market for you. Now, that's important because if you don't seize the moment and pivot quickly if you need to, you're not going to be able to thrive. You know, why am I on this call? I mean, I obviously don't need to be, and I don't need them. I'll tell you why. I've gone through 3 stages of my life. I get to survive. That's what I had to go through while I was in a trailer park. Then I got to thrive, and now I get to matter. I literally get to matter to people like Rob and by extension you, and that's important. Now, one of my trivia questions here is, what percentage of politicians have been trained in business or accounting or finance or economics? Well, remember that Pareto principle, that 80-20 rule I mentioned? Turns out that 13% have been trained in business, accounting, or finance, and 8% in economics. That means 80% have not been trained for what we're doing right now and what they're doing. And what are they doing? They're pumping money into the economy. And we all hope that it's the right thing, but what we know is it's adding to our national debt at a ridiculous rate. You see, when you go back and look in 2008 through 2011, they increased the national or Fed's balance sheet by $2 trillion. And it took them 3 years to do it. Well, you know what happened? $2.268 billion, $2.268 trillion rather, in a few weeks was added to their balance sheet in order to try to jumpstart this economy. Now there's another 484 billion, a half a trillion more. And I got news for you. That's not the end. It's still going to be coming. So the government's going to do whatever it has to do right now, which is more than it did before and quicker than it has ever in history. Now, the money is starting to show up for many of you. You're all getting either the payment protection plan, or you're getting EIDL, or you're getting stimulus money, like a check like that. Or you're getting if you have direct deposit with the IRS, you're getting a account status like that, where an ACH payment is going into your account if you're married for $2,400. I underlined this thing that I'm sure most of you have not heard of before, because it's something that I learned when I was in graduate school in economics, and that is moral hazard. The notion that there's a shift of risk from you to somebody else. Now, what do I mean by that? If you buy insurance, that means that you have then shifted the risk of any loss to somebody else. If your health's bad, your insurance company pays. If your property gets vandalized, the insurance company reimburses you. So that's this notion of moral hazard, and there's a certain amount of insurance that we need in our lives if we're smart. Will property ownership ever be the same again? And how does it relate to that moral hazard thing? Well, in America, the government can't just arbitrarily decide to take your property from you. You're a landlord or you're a homeowner. So what could they do? Well, they can control and influence people who have to do with property. You see, the government is overruling lease agreements now and mandating rent forbearance. So rents are being pushed out. The government is also saying it's okay not to pay your mortgage payment. They're also telling lenders that they can't foreclose, and they're telling landlords that they can't evict. Well, I understand why that's being done, but ask yourself 3 questions. Number 1, how do you as an agent or as a real estate investor price these facts into your purchase decisions or those of your clients? How do you do that in the future? Because it's a real risk. Prices could come down given that an investor doesn't want to buy if they can't collect rent. So I'm asking myself, how will this moral hazard, the notion that what I am potentially going to impact is now being shifted in terms of accountability to somebody else. I worry about myself if I fall prey to doing things to rely on others. Don't rely on others. Don't allow your family to rely on others. Other than you, of course, your clients, your tenants, make sure that they know this is the time to take responsibility, because other things are happening demographically. You see, if I had started the year 2020 and given you a forecast of what was going to happen, I could have told you confidently that there's going to be 3.8 million births, there's going to be 2 million marriages, about half of those in divorce, and another 3 million or so in deaths. I could have told you that because I can look at statistics and know that. Well, now we've got a black swan called COVID-19. Well, let's talk about divorces. It's generally felt that because we're in closer proximity to those that sometimes we don't want to be, thank God, present company excluded, because my wife's the best woman on the planet. Guys, I got her. You get second. But at the end of the day, it's all about, how are you going to get together? It's expected that divorces are going to go up. We know deaths are going to go up because they're already going up. Marriages are going down, not because people don't want to get married, but because they're delaying them. So if marriages are delayed, births are going to be impacted. And the question is, how many people who are in isolation who aren't being divorced or getting divorced are having more children? And those that are they offsetting the number of people who would have gotten married and maybe had first children. So there are things that are happening that we in real estate need to be sensitive about, because what this does is allow for us to predict demographic shifts, international migration. How many people are able to get across the border? You've seen what the president has recently done. He's stopped all the green cards and all the other things so that people can't get across the border unless they have a very, if they have to have an unusual circumstance that requires that they work here. And so what's going to happen is what was already declining over the last few years is going to go to zero. We could see population growth of only 0.35%. That's a third of 1%. It was predicted back in 2017 to be twice that. So things are shifting. That means the number of households are going to shift. That means the number of divorces that will create demand for one-person housing is going to be impacted. It's already happened in China. And it also means that markets are going to turn from very strong to strong, which is where we were in the fourth quarter, to now a situation where markets are slow or very slow. Google allows all of us to know what's going on. But of course, you use Google to find something, where we pay for what's called predictive analytics to see what Google searches are happening so we can match what's happening in your mind with what's likely to happen as a result of it. So we've been able to track unemployment because as unemployment went from virtually nothing up to 6 million, we saw search results going up in the preceding week. We knew it was going to come down from 6 million to 5 and to 4 because search results started dropping. So new home Google search results are down 24%. And some of this can be impacted by builder spending. We also know that there's an opportunity for pent-up demand on the other side. And in the case of existing, we know that Google searches are also down. We know that migration is happening. If you look in the blue and the red, that's where people currently are. In other words, people, when they do move or have been moving, then they've been moving to those cities at the top and generally moving out of those cities on the bottom. Well, where were they last year? Look at New York City, that outlier. Last year, a lot of people were moving. Look at this year in red. They can't move. So things are happening to affect the housing market that obviously you don't track, but I have to because I'm trying to be an investor. I'm not trying to sell a home. California realtors have expectations. I use this because I think it will help you get a sense for what we think may be coming next. Turns out that when surveyed recently, near the end of March, early April, they were asked, once shelter in place is relaxed, what do you think the number of sellers will be? Will it be higher than normal or lower than normal? And what about buyers? Well, realtors believe, those of you who are watching this yourself may have participated in that survey, fewer buyers than normal. 41% of realtors said there'll be fewer buyers versus 27 who said more. And realtors believe that 46% more sellers will happen instead of 21% fewer. In other words, crack the code, there are going to be more sellers than buyers. And buyers, we believe, are going to be looking for great deals. Why do we believe that? Well, because 79% told us in the survey that they're anticipating 5% or greater lower prices. 56% of the 79% said 5 to 10% lower, and 23% 10% lower. Now think of this. These are largely people who at the end of 2019 were happy to pay full price. Now they're more skeptical, especially on existing. New homes, there are going to be more incentives, there are going to be attractive financing to go with them and so on. I believe new homes will be less impacted from a price standpoint than existing homes. And I hope, for your sake, that it's wrong because I'd rather you make your percentage commission on a higher price home. But if you're asking me, what do I believe? I'm telling you what, based on others, are telling us are survey results that would lead us to predictively analyze the future. Morgan Stanley, we all know, JP Morgan, when they look at existing inventory, the good news is the existing of inventory homes that were available to sell were at the lowest level on record going into COVID-19. That is great news. They believe from a predictive standpoint that in the best scenario, home price appreciation will be 0 for 2020. In a worst case scenario, they believe prices could drop 10% and in the middle 5. Now, anytime I see somebody say 0, 5, and 10, it looks like there's not a lot of sophistication associated with that bell-shaped curve. But the point is, it's yet another data point from another research source that we pay to try to get intelligence so that we can make better informed decisions. And by extension, Rob can. By extension, the other guys can, you can. I want Gene to benefit. I want Brent to benefit. I want Scott to benefit. And by extension, I want you to benefit from what I'm sharing, because I'm going to do this anyway, and I'm not selling anything. So at the end of the day, this is for you to make better informed decisions about what you're going to do to pivot if you need to, or to optimize for what you have. There's a big shift in demand and supply that could be created from distress and opportunities. It's called supply and demand and price. Well, for those of you who've had economics 101, you know that. But what you don't know is that before we went into this, demand and supply were more or less in balance. And now both price and demand will likely soften. But it's going to vary so much across market. So as you well know, all markets are not created in real estate. They're not all equal. In fact, there are 405 MSAs. Those are metropolitan statistical areas, which are otherwise known as markets across the US that have at least a certain population base or more. Well, what's going on in those 405 markets? See, there is no US real estate market. So anybody that ever tells you that, as soon as they say, what's going on in the US real estate market, you know they don't know what they're talking about. Because the US real estate market is a sum of 405 markets, or millions of different census tracts. It's only an aggregate of what's going on in all those places. Every market is different. Right now, there's a concentration of jobs in certain sectors that are high risk. Think about cruise. How are those companies doing? Well, the markets that serve those are being impacted. Think about Miami. From a cruise ship standpoint, that's affecting their employment. How about oil and gas in Houston? How about leisure and hospitality in Vegas? I could go through all this, but what do I do with it? Well, I don't sit around saying, it's a pretty map. No, I try to figure out if I can look at each of those 6 sectors and look at all 405 of those MSAs, I can then figure out which ones are high, medium, and low. Low being best. Low means they have a low likelihood of being impacted by COVID-19. Well, wouldn't you like that kind of intelligence? And oh, by the way, you can pick your market in here, and I can't show 405, but there are major markets like these, and then there are secondary markets like these, and of course there are tertiary markets as well. But you can see third from the right, if you're in Indianapolis now, you're not likely to be as impacted as, say, if you were in Miami. Every market is different. Number 3, once you've prepared, once you've started doing some of this thinking about what's going on, now it's time to start deciding. There's something called the money game that I showed many of you when we were in Mexico. This is a triangle that I drew on a napkin 40 years ago with my kid, 30 years, I'm sorry, with my kids. And I was trying to explain to them the money game. And I said, there's only 3 things you're ever going to have to know: how to generate income, otherwise known as cash, how to accumulate assets that will grow your wealth, either because they go up in value or they throw off income, and then keep as much of both as you can. Now, you on this call are different than me, but I do private lending primarily to flippers to generate income, generate cash. And when I'm invested in real estate, it throws off cash flow. For those of you who want to be serious investors, you may do private lending yourself or you may not, but all of you have the capacity to do real estate. For God's sakes, you know it. So why wouldn't you? You see, it's one thing to generate a commission, but there are 3 types of appreciation that you can benefit from. You think of market appreciation like I used to before I became a student of real estate. What I realize now is that there's instant appreciation where you buy a property for less than it's worth, that's probably dated, then you fix it up and remodel it, and you force appreciation. And then if you do that in the right market, like I used to in San Diego or Tampa or Las Vegas or other markets, then I get market appreciation. Think about all the money you could have made over your career if you would have known what I know when I know it, and you were to get in and out at the right times, and you were to benefit from cash flow on real estate, instant appreciation by buying at a discount, forced appreciation by remodeling it and lifting its value, and market appreciation. That is how you make three types of money. As I said when we were in Mexico: obscene, ungodly, and embarrassing. So that's what I want for you. And lastly, I use Roth self-directed IRAs. You've got to do that. And I happen to live in Puerto Rico with the guys on the call here because we benefit from a tax standpoint. Know who you are and tweak your model. This is one thing that's going to be really important for you as you move forward. You're going to fit in one of four glasses. Some of you on this call are optimists, and I don't discredit you for that. You're an optimist. You believe the glass is half full. I get it. There are some of you who are pessimists. I also don't have a problem with you. You think the glass is half empty. And there are times where I'm optimistic and times when I'm pessimistic, but what I really try to be is realistic. My glass is neither empty nor full. It's just what it is. It's just a glass of water. This allows me at different points in the market cycle to be unemotional. I can actually make better informed decisions than you can if you're being guided by what you believe or what your clients think. Because home buying is an emotional decision. Investing should not be. So if I'm more realistic, I can be an opportunistic person. An opportunist is somebody like me who says, well, while you idiots were arguing about the contents of the glass, I was drinking the freaking water and it's empty. So you don't even have a half of a glass anymore. I mean, I want to make a point here that you got to be realistic, and that's what I've tried to help you be today. But I want you to be opportunistic because it's a very volatile time, and this is the chance to take realism and turn it into being an opportunist. And the health and the economic crisis is still in the early stages of unfolding. I'm sorry, it's not over. In fact, the fallout is just beginning. You may have experienced the crash in 2008. You think you know what to expect, and you don't. You haven't seen anything yet. And the reason I know that is because housing markets and their corrections lag. When the real estate market hit its demand peak, think about what I just said, demand peak in California, it was May of 2005. When did it crash in price? It didn't drop in price until February of 2007. It took 21 months before, while demand was dropping like a rock, for the market to finally correct. That is important for you to know. The stock market can drop, as you well know, by a third in a week. Oil and gas, look what's happened to it. It literally went through the floor. Like, it's impossible. It's never happened before, and it did it in 2 days. By contrast, real estate takes time, and it leaves me clues. That's why I win 99.9% of the time, and you can too, whether it's on real estate sales or real estate investing. So what factors need to be present in order for home prices to crash? There are really three. The most basic are mortgage interest, and I don't have time to get into a lot of detail on this. I've got a whole slide on that, but mortgage rates would need to increase enough to discourage buyers from entering the market. Second is inventory. Inventory would need to expand substantially and quickly, and inventory could, if there are less buyers and more sellers, going into the move out of your shelter place that we're potentially going to. And then distressed sales that are created by layoffs. Look, something's got to happen as a result of 26 million people being out of work. I mean, think about that, 26 million people. So at the end of the day, we're going to see loan defaults and distressed sales and foreclosures if we're going to see an increase significantly and a high likelihood of a crash. That's what the Fed is trying to stave off, is a situation just like that. Now, as I said before, certain geographic opportunities are going to recover faster or not going to be impacted as quickly, and therefore we'll be able to segment boom markets, new boom towns, and those markets that will have less competition. Think about it. Orlando was a very competitive market moving into this. But you think that Orlando is impacted by cruise? Yes. You may have heard of somebody called Disney Cruise Line. Do you think they're impacted by seniors? Yeah. Do you think they're impacted by hospitality and leisure and transport? Yes. So some markets are going to be impacted. I'm not trying to rain on your parade if you happen to be in any of these markets. I'm just telling you, be a realistic, because what'll happen and has happened already, and we've seen it before, and we know the story. We saw in the last month 500,000 millionaires lose their millionaire status. At the end of 19, there were 11 million of them, including the guys that were on the call with me here. And fortunately, they had an idea this was coming. They know how to pivot. And at the end of the first quarter, there are 500,000 people who didn't see it coming, who didn't know how to pivot. And it's dropping in April. So there are going to be more people who lose millionaire ranks in April, and it's not going to stop there. Now, I know what's going to happen because it happened before. It's happened in 3 cycles that I've been a part of, or at least been a student of, and one that I experienced full on. So the good news for those of you who are in what I call the top 1%, the top 1%, incidentally, are people who either generate income of $400,000 or more, or have a net worth of $2 million or more. That's generally, and I'm rounding now, the top 1%. Well, if you make $100,000 or more, you're in the top 10-ish percent. If you happen to, have a $500,000 in net worth, you're probably there as well. So just because you're not a millionaire or you don't make $1 million a year doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you can't get there. I started in a freaking trailer park for the first 20% of my life. So I know there's an opportunity for you to capitalize, but it's all about timing. You have the best opportunity for timing moving forward, in my opinion. It may not feel like it at times, and it's not going to be a smooth road, and it's not going to be a gradual descent. It's going to be a little rough, but that's okay, because that's where I call it the have-nots are going to fall off the train, and the haves are going to capitalize on this. Just like in 2007 through 2009, when all of a sudden those people who were successful, the top 1%ers, they saw their income drop 36%. And then when the recovery happened, they gained it all back. While meanwhile, the 99% who lost it saw almost a flattening during the same period of time. So we've all heard this expression, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. I'm not trying to say that that's a good thing. I'm saying it's a real thing. It's just the way it is. There's a transference of wealth, and you want to be on the receiving end, if at all possible, because the top 1% typically capture 95% of the recovery. So when you know that, and now you do, know that better days are ahead for those of us who understand this, who understand there's an opportunity and who sees it. Look, if I tell you this and you don't do anything, what's the point? I want you to seize the opportunity. Do I feel like you're going to compete with me? No, I'm looking to collaborate, not to compete. And that's what EXP is all about. It's why the guys who do these webinars for you are doing these for you. Number 4, stop talking about legacy. Everybody says, oh, I want to create a legacy. Some people say, I'm going to write a book about it. Here's an idea. Just do it. How many people actually do it? How many build an amazing legacy? Very, very few. It doesn't mean they're bad people. It's just that life kind of gets in the way. I believe that you, as the head of your household, can believe that you can take advantage of this, take the economy and make it your economy, and do it relentlessly. Do it while you're alive. Don't worry about a legacy when you're dead. What good does that do you? And those that have the highest likelihood are those that are the most successful. That's why you have to be successful. I always say to folks, when you have one option in life, someone else has all the leverage. When you have 3 different things that you can generate income on, just like Gene talked about at the beginning, when you have 3 different ways you can generate income, you don't have one option. You have multiple options. You're the one in the driver's seat, because at any time, any one of those could be doing the best. And at the next time, something else could do the best. What a great position to be in. Just do it. You're in lockdown. Build a legacy. Create something amazing with your family. Last year, my sons and I made a decision. We decided that, after college, My two sons went to college in 2002 and 2004. And in 2009, we got back together again and created a real estate company. Go figure. And we crushed it. And in 2013, I've always said, sons, I want you to leave and outgrow me. Well, sure enough, one of them outgrew me and actually did it twice. And my other son is catching up and really crushing it right now. And in 2019, after one having done it twice and the other one doing it now, we decided to get back together again. Even though we're in different cities, we can talk, we can text, we can FaceTime, we can do whatever we need to and tell each other how much we care for each other and to capitalize on this, to take this volatility and turn it into an opportunity and to make 2020 our year. We're going to make more money, do more good, and have more fun. That's why I'm on this call. Look, if you haven't benefited at all from this call, then you should tell Rob and the rest of the guys. If you have benefited, you should tell them. My whole goal is to make more money because I can do more good and have more fun. And by doing that with my sons or you or Rob or Gene or Scott or Brett, I can do more and really, really be the luckiest guy on the planet. And lastly, and fifth, you've got to be a learner now. If you don't, you're preparing to fail. What do I mean by a learner? Well, in times of change, the people who inherit the earth are the people who are learning about the future. The learned, that is, people who already know something, the learned find themselves perfectly equipped to deal with a world that didn't exist anymore. It's the craziest thing, but think of how big of a change things are, or the pace of which change is happening right now. If you just stay where you are, you're going to be beautifully equipped for a world that leaves you behind. You're going to be roadkill. You've got to be a learner. You've got to strive for more. You've got to want, as I call, a quest for more. I know this because it's not my first rodeo. I thrive on this uncertainty. I honestly didn't expect an opportunity like this again in my lifetime. I saw it in 79, 80, and I didn't take advantage of it. I saw it in 89, 90, I did.